Ethan sat in his small room on the research station. The soft humming of machines running through the walls like a heartbeat. His desk was cluttered with tools, tiny parts, and a half-finished repair job he had promised to complete by morning. The room was quiet, comfortable, and normal, exactly how Ethan liked it. He was a man of calm routines, predictable tasks, and silent nights. Nothing ever surprised him here. At least, that was true until the night everything changed. It was almost midnight when Ethan finally leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. He planned to sleep early, but the project kept pulling him in. He pushed the tools aside and stood up, stretching his arms. That was when he heard it, a soft sound from the door. Tap, not a knock, more like someone gently touching the panel with trembling fingertips. Ethan blinked and looked toward the door, confused. No one visited him at this hour. No one visited him much at all. At first, he thought it was the ventilation system making noise again. It happened sometimes. He waited, listening. Tap, tap. This time the sound was too gentle, too intentional. Ethan frowned and walked closer. Maybe someone needed help. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone on the night shift was checking rooms. He placed his hand on the door panel, ready to open it. But the door opened by itself. Just a crack, slow, cautious, almost scared. Ethan's breath caught. He didn't move. The hallway was dim, lit only by soft blue emergency lights. For a moment, he saw nothing but empty corridor. And then a small shadow stepped forward. A girl. She was young, maybe close to his age, but clearly not human. Her skin was pale with a faint lavender tone, glowing markings like gentle light running across her cheeks and down her neck. Her eyes were large, expressive, and full of fear. She looked delicate, tired, and out of breath, as if she had run far before reaching his door. She slipped inside silently and closed the door behind her before he could react. Ethan stepped back in shock. "Wait. What are you doing? Who are you?" The alien girl pressed her back against the door as if trying to hold it shut. Her hands shook. Her breathing was uneven. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked around his room quickly, scanning every corner, as though making sure no one else was there. Her translator device, a small crystal pinned near her collar, was flickering with a weak red light. Broken. She tried to speak, but only a soft, high-pitched tone came out, full of emotion but no clear words. She pressed her palm against the device, tapped it twice, and then winced when it sparked weakly. She looked at him again. Desperate. Ethan softened his voice. "It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to be scared. Just tell me what's wrong." She kept shaking her head and pressing her hand to her chest. Then she pointed at the hallway. Then at him. Then back at the hallway again. Her movements urgent and trembling. Ethan didn't understand the details, but one thing was clear. She was terrified of something outside. Her eyes widened suddenly when faint footsteps echoed down the corridor. Someone was walking slowly, passing room by room. The alien girl panicked. She made a soft gasping sound and rushed behind Ethan before he could ask anything. She grabbed the back of his shirt with both hands, holding tightly as if he were a shield. Ethan could feel her shaking. He turned his head slightly and whispered, "Hey, you're safe. Whoever's out there won't come in." The footsteps stopped right outside his door. The girl held her breath. Ethan felt her grip tighten, her fingers trembling. He didn't know who was outside, or why she was hiding. But something inside him reacted automatically. He stepped slightly in front of her, ready to block the door if anyone tried to enter. A shadow moved under the door. Someone stood there for several seconds. Then the footsteps continued down the hall, slowly fading away until there was only silence again. The alien girl finally let out a long, shaky breath. Ethan felt her hands release his shirt as she slowly stepped back. He turned around to look at her fully. She looked exhausted, frightened, almost ready to collapse. He spoke gently. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head weakly. "Did someone follow you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Do you need help?" She nodded again, more firmly this time. The translator crackled, and a half-broken whisper came through. Safe. Needed. Safe. Ethan kneeled slightly to match her height and lifted her chin gently so she could look at him. I don't know what happened to you, but I promise you're safe in here. No one will hurt you. Not while I'm here. Her eyes softened, filling with relief. She placed her hand over her heart, as if thanking him without words. But before Ethan could say anything else, her knees gave out. She slumped forward. Ethan reached out instinctively, catching her before she hit the floor. Her body was light, warm, and trembling from exhaustion. He carried her to the chair by his desk and carefully sat her down. She curled into the blanket he placed around her like a frightened animal seeking warmth. Her eyes fluttered as if fighting sleep, but she kept trying to stay awake. Ethan spoke softly again. You don't have to explain everything right now. Rest. I'll keep watch. She blinked slowly, looking at him with deep gratitude. She raised one hand and touched his wrist gently as if saying thank you. Then her eyes closed, and she slipped into sleep almost instantly. Ethan sighed. This was not how his night was supposed to go. He was an engineer, not a guardian of mysterious midnight visitors. But as he looked at the fragile alien girl curled in his chair, something inside him shifted. It wasn't annoyance. It wasn't fear. It was a quiet sense of responsibility. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. He didn't know why she had chosen his room of all places. But she had. She had come here, trembling, scared, and asking him for safety. He couldn't turn away from that. He pulled the blanket up gently to cover her shoulders. The glowing markings on her skin dimmed slightly as she slept, as if relaxing in the warmth of the room. She looked peaceful now, almost childlike in her innocence. Ethan found himself staring for a moment, wondering what kind of world she came from, what kind of troubles she faced, and why fate brought her here to him. After making sure she was comfortable, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed and watched the door quietly. The station was quiet again, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been looking for her with purpose. He wondered if they would return. He wondered what danger she had escaped. He wondered why she picked him, a man she barely knew, for safety. The longer he looked at her, the more he felt there must be a reason. The translator on her collar flickered softly as she slept, making broken sounds occasionally, as if trying to reboot. Ethan made a mental note to repair it when morning came. If she could speak properly, maybe he could finally understand what she was running from. But for now, she needed rest. Ethan dimmed the lights. The soft glow from her skin lit the corner of the room faintly like a night lamp. He lay back on his bed, eyes still half open, listening carefully for any sound in the hallway. Hours passed quietly. The girl slept without moving much, except for small twitches when she dreamed. At one point she murmured something softly in her language. A gentle sound, almost like a plea. Ethan stood up and adjusted the blanket again, making sure she stayed warm. He whispered, "You're okay. You're safe here." Even though she couldn't hear him clearly, something in her expression calmed. When morning light reached through the small window, Ethan finally allowed himself to relax. The danger from last night felt distant, but the mystery remained. The alien girl began to stir, her fingers curling around the blanket. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the soft light. For a moment she looked confused, trying to remember where she was. Then she saw Ethan sitting nearby, watching her with gentle eyes, and she relaxed again. She smiled faintly, shyly, as if grateful to see a familiar face. Ethan returned the soft smile. "Good morning. You're safe." Her translator crackled again, this time producing a slightly clearer sound. "Safe. Thank." She pressed her palm to her chest and bowed her head slightly, her species sign of gratitude. Ethan sat across from her and spoke warmly. "I'm Ethan. When your translator works, you can tell me your name." The girl nodded with a soft hum. She pointed at the broken device, then at him, silently asking if he could fix it. Ethan chuckled softly. "Yes, I can try." She smiled again, more brightly this time, her eyes shining with hope. "Last night, She arrived as a stranger in fear. This morning, she sat before him as someone who trusted him completely. And Ethan realized something simple but powerful. His quiet life was no longer quiet. And he didn't mind at all. The alien girl sat up slowly, still wrapped in the blanket Ethan had placed around her. Her glowing markings shimmered faintly in the morning light, but now, instead of fear, there was calmness in her eyes. Ethan noticed the change immediately. Last night she had looked like a frightened animal seeking shelter. This morning, she looked like someone who had finally found a safe corner in a strange world. Ethan stood from his chair and stretched his back a little before speaking gently. "Are you feeling better?" The girl nodded with a soft hum. Her translator flickered weakly, trying to form words, but only producing broken fragments of sound. Ethan moved closer, kneeling beside her chair. "Let me take a look at this. It's probably just a damaged circuit." He carefully lifted the small, crystal-like translator attached to her collar. She remained completely still, watching him closely. Her expression was full of trust, as if she believed Ethan could fix anything. Ethan removed the device and walked to his work desk. The girl rose from the chair slowly, still wrapped in the blanket, and followed him quietly. She stopped beside him and watched his hands with deep curiosity. Ethan smiled to himself. She seemed fascinated by how humans worked with tools, how they handled delicate pieces with patience and care. He opened the translator casing gently. Inside, the crystal was cracked, and a few wires had come loose. "No wonder it's failing," he murmured. The girl tilted her head, trying to understand what he said. Ethan pointed to the damaged parts. "Broken," he explained simply. She nodded, understanding that much. As he began repairing the device, she leaned closer, her eyes following each precise movement. Sometimes, she would make a tiny sound of surprise when a tool sparked or clicked. Other times she would point to something she didn't understand, asking silent questions with her expressive eyes. Ethan answered each one patiently. The room felt peaceful, almost warm, as if the tension from last night had disappeared completely. When Ethan finished reconnecting the wires, he closed the casing and tested it. The device lit up with a soft blue glow, stable this time. "There," he said, smiling. "Try it now." He handed it to her. She held it in both hands, almost reverently, and then clipped it back onto her collar. The blue glow intensified, spreading across her markings. She touched the crystal once, and the translator hummed, "Thank you." A soft voice translated, shaky but understandable. Ethan let out a relieved breath. "It works." The girl clasped her hands together, her face lighting up with joy. Then she bowed slightly, the gesture slow and sincere. "Thank you, Ethan." "Safe." "You made safe." Hearing her say his name surprised him. It sounded different coming from her lips, gentler, almost musical. He smiled. "I'm glad it helped. But you still haven't told me your name." The girl blinked. Her translator glowed again, sounding a little shy. "Leora," Ethan repeated. "That's a beautiful name." Her cheeks glowed a little brighter, the alien version of blushing. She lowered her head for a moment, touched by the compliment. Ethan motioned toward the small table. "You should eat something. You must be starving." Leora hesitated. "I don't know." "Human food," her translator said. Ethan reassured her. "I'll find something gentle on the stomach." He opened his food storage and pulled out simple nutrient packs, fruit slices, and soft bread. Leora approached carefully, examining everything as if each item was a strange new creature. She touched the fruit slice first, sniffed it, then looked up at him for reassurance. Ethan nodded. She took a tiny bite. Her eyes widened instantly. She looked at the fruit slice, then at Ethan, then back at the fruit again. She took a bigger bite this time, and a soft, happy sound escaped her lips. Ethan laughed quietly, relieved that she liked it. "You like it?" "Yes," her translator echoed. "Very sweet. Very warm taste." She continued eating slowly, savoring every bite. Ethan watched her with a gentle smile. It was strange how quickly she had become a part of his morning, how natural it felt to sit with her like this. When she finished eating, Leora looked around his room with more curiosity than fear now. She touched the edges of his tools, examined the glowing monitor, and even poked a pillow as if testing its softness. She moved like someone experiencing everything for the first time. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, watching her explore. "You really haven't been in human rooms much, have you?" Leora touched her translator again. "Not allowed. Only common areas. Not private rooms. Is that why you looked so scared yesterday? Were you worried you'd get in trouble for coming here?" Her expression darkened a little. She nodded slowly. Ethan frowned. "You're not in trouble. You needed help." She placed a hand on her chest again. "Fear. Too much fear last night." "Why?" Ethan asked quietly. "Were you running from someone?" Leora hesitated. She walked to the window and stared outside at the planet below, its blue and green surface swirling with storm clouds. She wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to hold her memories still. Ethan stood up and walked toward her. But he didn't push her to speak. He simply waited. After a long pause, Leora touched her translator. "Some people follow me, wanted me, for tests. I did not agree." Ethan felt a cold shift in his stomach. "Who? Students? Staff?" "Some students," she whispered. "Some researchers. Not all. Only few. They say I have special energy. Want to measure. Want to keep me longer." I was scared. Ethan clenched his fists. But not in anger, more in frustration that she had gone through this alone. She looked so gentle, so harmless. The idea of anyone intimidating her felt deeply wrong. She continued, her voice trembling. "Last night, they looked for me again. I ran. Doors opened randomly. But my heart, it told me, your room is safe." Ethan stared at her, stunned. "My room?" Leora nodded softly. "I saw you before. In cafeteria. You looked kind. Not loud. Not rough. Quiet human. Safe human." I follow feeling. Something warm tightened in Ethan's chest. He didn't know she had ever noticed him, let alone trusted him enough to choose his room during panic. He stepped closer and spoke softly. "I'm glad you came here. Truly." Leora looked up at him with wide, gentle eyes. She opened her mouth to speak again, when a sudden sound echoed through the hallway. Knock. It was soft but distinct. Leora froze instantly, fear returning to her expression. Her hands began to shake again. She stepped closer to Ethan without thinking, almost hiding behind him like she had the night before. Ethan placed a steady hand behind her. "It's okay. No one will hurt you." The knock came again, a little louder. Ethan walked toward the door slowly. Leora stayed behind him, gripping the blanket around her shoulders tightly. Ethan checked the door panel. The visitor ID showed only a maintenance worker doing routine checks. Ethan pressed his palm to the panel and opened the door a crack. "Yes?" The worker looked bored and sleepy. "Morning. Just checking heating vents." "Quick 30-second scan." Ethan nodded. "Go ahead." The worker stepped inside briefly, scanned the vent on the wall opposite the sleeping area, then left without ever noticing Leora hiding silently behind the desk. When the door closed, Ethan turned to her. Leora was still tense, breathing fast. "It's okay," he said gently. "Just maintenance. You're safe." Leora slowly came out from hiding. Her translator flickered. "I scared too quickly. I am sorry." "Don't apologize," Ethan said softly. "Anyone in your situation would be scared." She looked down, then moved toward him hesitantly. She reached out and touched his arm. A tiny gesture, but full of meaning. "You make heart calm," her translator said in a warm tone. Ethan wasn't used to soft compliments, especially from someone as gentle as her. His face warmed slightly, but he didn't step away. "I'll keep you safe. I promise." For the rest of the day, Leora stayed inside the room, afraid to step into the hall. Ethan understood. He spent the hours repairing his work device while she sat nearby, drawing symbols with her finger on the table surface. Sometimes she would ask him simple questions about humans, and he answered each one patiently. She laughed quietly when he tried to mimic her species' gesture of gratitude. He laughed when she tried to pronounce certain human words and stretched them too long. The room slowly filled with a peaceful warmth neither of them expected. Evening arrived, and the room lights dimmed automatically. Leora curled up again in the chair, blanket wrapped around her. But this time she didn't look afraid. She looked safe, comfortable. She watched Ethan with soft eyes as he finished his work for the day. Before falling asleep, she whispered through the translator, "Thank you. Again." Ethan. Ethan smiled gently. "Good night, Leora." As she drifted to sleep, Ethan realized something clearly. Protecting her didn't feel like a burden. It felt right. It felt important. And it felt like the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet. Leora woke before Ethan the next morning, the soft light of the station glowing gently through the small window. She sat quietly, wrapped in the blanket he had given her, her glowing markings pulsing in a slow, peaceful rhythm. She looked around the room, observing the tools on the desk, the small shelf of books, and the neat organization that showed Ethan's calm personality. Everything felt safe here. Warm. Human. Ethan stirred on his bed, blinking away sleep. When he noticed Leora watching him with her gentle eyes, he sat up. "Morning," he said softly. "Good morning, Ethan," her translator replied in a calm tone, sounding clearer than yesterday thanks to his repairs. Ethan smiled. "Did you sleep well?" Leora nodded. "Very well. Safe dreams." "Good," Ethan said, relieved. "I'm glad." She stood up slowly, stretching her arms like a small creature waking for the first time. Her movements were graceful but still a little shaky, as if she had lived too long in fear and wasn't used to relaxing. As Ethan prepared a simple breakfast, Leora walked around the room again, touching objects with curiosity. She stopped at a small metallic frame on the shelf, picking it up gently. It was a photo of Ethan with a group of engineers on the day he joined the station. "This, your group?" her translator asked. Ethan glanced over. "Yeah. That was my first week here. You look," she tilted her head, searching for the right word. "Hopeful." Ethan laughed quietly. "That was before I realized how much work this place gives me." Leora smiled at the joke, her glowing markings brightening with warm color. She set the picture back carefully, her fingers brushing the frame as if respecting it. Ethan handed her another fruit slice, and she accepted it gratefully. She ate slowly, savoring the sweetness like it was the best thing she had ever tasted. After breakfast, Ethan sat at his desk, checking the station's daily announcements. Leora stood behind him, peeking at the screen. She couldn't read human language well yet, but she recognized icons. Suddenly she pointed to one of the alerts. "What is that symbol?" her translator asked. Ethan frowned. "That's a security patrol notice. They're checking dorm halls again." Leora tensed instantly. Ethan reached up and placed his hand gently on her arm. "It doesn't mean they're after you. They're just doing routine checks." But she didn't relax completely. Ethan could feel her fear return in small waves. She wasn't trembling like before, but she held herself tightly, her eyes watching the door as if expecting danger to come through it at any moment. He turned his chair to face her. "Leora, no one is allowed to take you anywhere without your consent. And you're not alone anymore." Her breath softened. "I know. But fear sometimes stays, even when danger is gone." Ethan nodded. "I understand." Her markings brightened faintly as she gazed at him. "You understand more than most," she said softly. The moment lingered between them, warm and fragile. But then the door panel beeped softly. Someone had passed by in the hallway. Leora stiffened. Ethan stood quickly and checked the door, using the built-in camera viewer. Just two students talking and walking past. "See? Nothing to worry about," he assured her. Leora tried to relax again, though it took a moment. She walked back to the chair and sat down, curling her feet slightly under the blanket. Ethan sat beside her on the bed. "What did they want from you before?" Ethan asked gently. "Why were they following you?" Leora looked down at her hands, twisting the blanket between her fingers. "I glow differently than others of my kind. Some say it means I have strong energy. Some believe it can be studied to make new power sources." She hesitated. "I do not like when people look at me with too much hunger in their eyes." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're a person, Leora, not some tool to be used." Her eyes lifted slowly to meet his. "You say that, and I believe it." Ethan felt something shift inside him again. This girl was too gentle for the kind of attention she had received. Too innocent for the pressure placed upon her. She reached toward him, touching the sleeve of his shirt lightly. "I did not mean to bring trouble to your room. If security finds me here, you may get in trouble." "I'll handle it," Ethan said firmly. "You're not going anywhere you don't want to go." Leora's eyes shimmered, touched by the certainty in his voice. The day passed quietly. Ethan worked on his repairs while Leora practiced reading basic human letters. She sat cross-legged on his bed, tracing letters on a small tablet he lent her. Occasionally she would mispronounce a word, and Ethan would correct her, making her laugh softly. The tension from earlier faded, replaced by light moments and gentle connection. But just when the piece felt complete, a faint alarm tone echoed through the station, a low, distant sound. Leora froze instantly. Ethan checked the display. "It's a general alert," he said. "Not for us. Maybe just a system check." But the alert grew louder for a moment before fading again. Leora gripped the blanket closer to her chest, her fear standing out clearly in her wide eyes. "Come here," Ethan said softly. She moved to him, and he guided her to sit beside him. Her hands trembled slightly as she held onto him for reassurance. "It's nothing dangerous," he repeated gently. "Just routine." She nodded, but her body didn't relax completely. A few minutes later, the station speakers made an announcement. "Security will be conducting a full hallway sweep in the residential wing this evening." Leora's breath hitched. Ethan blinked in surprise. "A full sweep? That's unusual," she whispered. "They are looking for someone." Ethan took a deep breath. "It doesn't mean they're looking for you specifically. But still, we need to be careful." He stood up and paced the room, thinking. His small room was comfortable, but not designed for hiding someone during a security sweep. There was no secret space, no hidden compartment. The only thing they had was timing. Leora stood too, her hands twisting again. "If they find me, they take me away. They will not listen." Ethan moved to her side quickly. "I will speak for you. They'll have to listen." She shook her head. "Humans do not always listen to other humans." Ethan knew she wasn't wrong. Some people in authority didn't listen well at all. She stepped closer, her voice quiet. "Ethan, if danger comes, you must not protect me if it hurts your life." He stared at her, shocked. "Leora, I'm not abandoning you." Her translator hummed softly, struggling to express the emotion in her words. "Your kindness. It is rare. I do not want to cause you harm." "You won't," Ethan said firmly. "You're not a burden." She looked at him with eyes filled with something deep and fragile. "You make me feel safe. More safe than anyone." Ethan swallowed, feeling something warm move through him. "That's all I want." Evening came slowly. The hours felt heavy as they waited. The hallway outside remained quiet, but both of them knew that would change soon. Ethan prepared the room. He closed the curtains tightly, dimmed the lights, and adjusted the air filter so the room sounded like it was empty. As the clock ticked closer to the sweep, Leora stood near Ethan, her hands clasped in front of her, her glowing markings dimmed from stress. She whispered, "I am scared, but I trust you." Ethan gently took her hand, not tightly, just enough to let her know she wasn't alone. "We'll get through this together." She looked at their hands, then at him, her expression soft and full of gratitude. The hallway suddenly stirred with movement, voices, footsteps, the metallic click of scanning devices. Ethan and Leora both went still, Leora moved closer to him, almost hiding behind his shoulder as she had the first night. Ethan whispered, "It's okay. Stay quiet." The footsteps approached their door. Ethan felt Leora grip the back of his arm tightly. He could feel her trembling again. A security officer's voice spoke from the hall. "Room 73. Checking." Ethan's breath slowed. Leora held her breath entirely. A scanner hummed outside their door. The device read heat patterns, movement, and biological signatures. Leora instinctively pressed closer to Ethan, her markings dimming further, trying not to give off any unnatural glow. Ethan stood tall, prepared to speak if needed, but praying silently they wouldn't open the door. The scanner beeped. For a moment, Ethan felt his heart jump into his throat. Then the officer muttered, "Empty." Moving on. Footsteps faded. Leora let out a breath she had been holding for too long. Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling relief wash over him. Leora's knees almost gave out, but Ethan caught her gently. She looked up at him with wide, emotional eyes. "You protected me. Again." He shook his head. "We protected each other." She reached up with one hand and touched his cheek softly, a gesture from her species that meant deep trust. Ethan didn't move. He let her hand stay there, feeling the warmth of her glowing markings. "You are important to me," her translator whispered. Ethan felt his chest tighten, not with fear but with something warm and powerful. "You're important to me too." That night, as the station finally became quiet again and the sweep ended, Leora stayed close to Ethan, not out of fear, but because she felt safe beside him. Ethan sat with her until she fell asleep, her head leaning gently against his shoulder. He watched her peaceful breathing and realized the truth clearly. Leora wasn't just someone who needed help. She had become someone he cared for deeply, someone he would protect not out of duty, but because his heart wanted to. And he knew tomorrow would bring more questions, more challenges, and maybe more danger. But he also knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't letting her face any of it alone. The station halls were quiet the next morning, but the silence did not feel peaceful. It felt heavy, like the calm after a storm that promised another one soon. Ethan woke early, long before his alarm, because his mind had not rested properly. He kept replaying the security sweep in his head, imagining what would have happened if the officer had opened the door. Each time the thought appeared, he felt a sharp, protective ache in his chest. Leora woke slowly, blinking softly as the glow in her markings brightened. She was still leaning gently against Ethan, her head resting near his shoulder. When she realized she had fallen asleep like that, she sat up quickly, embarrassment warming her cheeks. Ethan smiled, trying to ease her shyness. "It's okay," he said softly. "You can rest however you like." Leora lowered her gaze for a moment, then nodded. "You stayed awake long time," her translator said. "You watched the door." "I didn't want anything to happen to you while you were sleeping," Ethan said. "You deserved at least one peaceful night." She placed a hand over her heart, gratitude shining in her eyes. "You make peace feel possible." Ethan didn't know how to respond to that. Her words always carried a gentle emotional weight that struck straight to his heart. As the morning settled in, Ethan checked the announcements again. His eyes widened at the new alert. Security meeting at 10. All residents must remain available for questioning regarding unidentified individuals on station. Leora noticed his expression change. "Is something wrong?" "They're tightening searches," Ethan said quietly. "They want to question everyone." Leora's markings dimmed. "They still look for someone." "Maybe," Ethan said, though he knew she was likely the reason. He paced the room. "We can't hide forever. Sooner or later, someone will question me directly." Leora held onto the blanket nervously. "If they question you, you must not lie," she said softly. "Lies make things worse." Ethan stopped walking. "I won't put you in danger, and I won't lie either. But we need to talk to someone who can actually help." "Who?" Leora whispered. "Officer Mara," Ethan said at last. "She's fair. She listens. She's the kind of person who understands when something isn't right." Leora looked uncertain. "What if she sends me away?" "She won't," Ethan said with quiet certainty. "Not if she hears everything. Not if she sees who you are. Leora approached him slowly, her hands trembling only a little. If I go with you, I trust you. Hearing her say those words filled Ethan with determination. He gently guided her closer. We'll go together. And I'll speak first. Before leaving the room, Leora hesitated. My glow. People notice. It makes me easy to find. Ethan looked around the room and grabbed a soft gray jacket. Wear this, he said. It'll cover most of your markings. Leora put it on carefully. The sleeves were a little long, and the collar rose high around her neck, hiding the glowing lines on her skin. She pulled the hood up, and her face became half hidden in shadow. Ethan smiled softly. Perfect. You look like a quiet student who doesn't want to talk to anyone. She tilted her head. Is that common among humans? Very, Ethan replied with a small laugh. They stepped into the hallway. Leora walked close to him, her steps silent and careful. Though she appeared calm from the outside, Ethan could feel her tension. Her hand brushed his occasionally, almost instinctively seeking reassurance. The walk to the security office felt longer than it truly was. Every time someone passed by, Leora lowered her head. Every time Ethan heard footsteps behind them, he glanced back protectively. When they reached the office, Ethan took a steady breath and pressed the door panel. Officer Mara, a tall woman with sharp eyes but a calm voice, looked up from her desk. Ethan? You're early for your questioning. Then, her eyes shifted to Leora. And who is the girl? Ethan didn't hesitate. Her name is Leora, and she needs help. Officer Mara's expression softened only slightly, but she didn't show alarm or aggression. Come inside, both of you. They entered. The door slid shut behind them. Leora stayed close to Ethan, gripping her sleeves. Mara folded her arms. Talk. Ethan explained everything: how Leora had been followed, how she showed up at his door terrified, how the translator was broken, how certain researchers wanted to pressure her into tests she never agreed to. Mara listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When Ethan finished, Mara turned to Leora. Is this true? Leora hesitated, then touched her translator. Yes, it is true. I was very afraid. Mara's eyes softened. Why didn't you report this earlier? Leora looked down. I thought no one would hear me. I am different. Different doesn't mean unprotected, Mara said firmly. You have rights on this station. Leora looked up again, hope flickering in her eyes. I do? Yes, Mara said. And if someone violated those rights, we'll find out. Ethan exhaled in relief. Leora stepped closer to him, her shoulder touching his lightly. Mara noticed their closeness but didn't comment. Instead, she sat at her desk and typed something quickly. I'll need to verify details. But until then, Leora will have temporary protective status. She won't be moved or questioned without my approval. Leora blinked. Protective status? It means you're safe, Ethan said softly, smiling. Leora's face lit with warm relief. But then she asked the question that had been sitting in her heart. Where will I stay? They might search my sleeping area again. Mara thought for a moment. She can stay in your room until this is resolved. Ethan was surprised, but he didn't disagree. That's fine with me. Leora turned to him, her markings glowing softly with gratitude even beneath the hood. Thank you, Mara added. But Ethan, your responsibility is higher now. If anything happens, you report it immediately. I will, Ethan promised. As they left the office, Leora let out a shaky breath. She helped us. She did, Ethan agreed. I told you not everyone here wants to hurt you. They walked back to Ethan's room, but this time the hallway felt less threatening. Leora still stayed close to him. But not from fear. More from comfort. People passed them, but no one paid attention. Leora's hood hid her glow well, and her soft footsteps blended into the normal noise of the station. Inside the room, Leora removed the hood slowly. Her markings brightened again now that they were safe. Ethan sat at the table, feeling the stress easing out of his shoulders. Leora approached him. Ethan, I am safe because of you. We're safe because of each other, he corrected gently. You trusted me. She sat across from him, her eyes soft. When I came here that night, I did not know what would happen. I only followed a feeling. What feeling? That you would not hurt me, she said. That you would understand me even before I could speak. Ethan felt something warm rise in his chest. Your feeling was right. She smiled shyly. Yes, I see that now. The room grew quiet for a moment, but not awkward. It was a calm silence, filled with unspoken understanding. After a while, Leora stood and walked to the small window, looking at the swirling clouds of the planet below. This world looks large, but sometimes I felt very small on it. You're not small, Ethan said warmly. You're strong, stronger than you think. She turned and looked at him, studying his face carefully. You changed my life, Ethan. And you changed mine, he said honestly. Leora stepped closer, her markings glowing softly like warm light in the dim room. She gently touched his hand, only a small touch, but meaningful. Ethan didn't pull away. He let her tiny hand rest against his, feeling the warmth and trust she offered. I want to stay near you, she whispered through the translator. Because with you, I feel safe. I feel understood. Ethan's voice softened completely. Then stay. As long as you want. Leora's eyes widened with happiness, and her glow brightened, shimmering gently across the room. In that moment, something shifted, not just safety, not just comfort. It was connection, quiet and pure, forming between two beings from different worlds, who somehow found each other in the middle of a cold metal station. Leora lowered her head slightly, her species gesture of affection and gratitude. Ethan placed his hand lightly over her head, comforting her. Outside, the station moved on with its usual noise and duties. But in Ethan's room, everything had changed. The fear that once lived there had been replaced with peace, hope, and the beginning of something new. That midnight encounter had started with fear, but it ended with trust, and from trust, a quiet bond had formed, one that neither of them wanted to let go. Together, they faced danger. Together, they found safety. And from that day forward, Leora did not navigate the station as a frightened stranger. She walked it, knowing a human stood beside her, someone who saw her not as an experiment or a subject, but as a person worth protecting. And that changed everything.